Minneapolis, but we are a statewide service agency. But I'm here specifically to talk about how some of these tools get utilized in community for very specific ends that these technologies do better than anything else. So we have a specific case study I wanted to talk about. Before I do get there, though, in terms of why Facebook versus something else or all the rest of it, I have a couple of comments there that I encourage everybody, businesses, nonprofits, government agencies, to think about. One of which is a presentation that my spouse is working on for the Council of Nonprofits tomorrow about social networking with the subtitle, "You're in the water, you better learn to swim." Because you're being discussed in these spaces, you're happening there, whether you're aware of it or not, it's going on. But the other piece I mentioned about Facebook specifically, and that's the one I want to talk a moment about, is the #1 internet presence in the United States and the world is Google. Doesn't shock anybody particularly. #2, Facebook. The second most visited internet presence in the United States and in the world today. That's a fairly rapid change from traditional sites like Yahoo and MSN and those kinds of things. This is what we call sticky. There are very personal and specific reasons to go back to it every day. You're kind of stuck to that site once you become engaged in it. So with hundreds of millions of users that are very stuck to going there specifically, I've gotten this question a lot, like, why in the world do we need to participate in these spaces? We have a web page. People can just come to it anytime they want to. Absolutely true. If they know what you do, they value what you do, and they want to be part of what you do, they can come find you. But if they don't know that stuff yet, and you're trying to derive some value out of them, you probably ought to go where they are. And that's one of the things that we were very excited about with this project that we were doing in St. Paul. We called Vacant No More. So this was a launch regarding the foreclosure crisis in the city of St. Paul. 2,000 plus boarded buildings that are sitting vacant, deteriorating as we speak in the city of St. Paul. Record numbers, huge problem. What are we going to do about it? Well, the city's traditional mechanisms to reoccupy vacant buildings are sort of, we can do 1 or 2 at a time. We can do 10 maybe. We can do 15. How do we attack thousands? And the question that we came back with from a nonprofit organization, the Summit University Planning Council, to the city government and to some real estate partners was, you all folks can't solve every single problem, but each one of those houses is on a block that's got somebody else that lives on it. That house has stakeholders that aren't you, but they have a very specific interest in that house being reoccupied, because the longer it goes vacant, the more opportunity it is to get vandalized, to bring their real estate values down and all the rest of it. Why aren't we engaging the people that live on that block as the value proposition and the sales force for that home? Like, well, okay, but what are they really going to do? They're not going to sit at their local Rainbow Foods and hand out flyers about that real estate. That's not their job. But don't engage them that way. Let's talk about how we use a little bit of government resource, and we did get a small portion of a CDBG grant, a Community Development Block Grant from the City of St. Paul, to help pay for some staff time to rev this whole thing up, to go out proactively, identify specific blocks where they've got some vacant properties, and in St. Paul that isn't hard. In most of the state of Minnesota, it's not that hard to do. And use the existing nonprofit infrastructure to say, who do you know that lives within a couple of blocks of this place? Now, come to our site, and we don't need you to stand 3 hours in front of a mall handing out flyers to sell this property. We want you to go where you're already going. Go to Facebook, you're already there. Go to Twitter or whatever else you're on, that's fine too, but you're already there. Go there and tell us what's really cool about your neighborhood and how it relates to that home. What have you got in social capital that adds value specifically to that piece of property, and give us a link back to the realtor that's selling that home. So you can go, boy, I love living on this block because my church is down this way. Or I love living on this block because the park is over here. Or my good friend Mary lives across the street and I love living on this block. Cool. Now, that particular posting has now hit somebody else's newsfeed. And in turn, if somebody else ever shares that, it hits somebody else's newsfeed. Now, for those of you that are not Facebook users, I want to take just a second to show you a couple of different ways to approach this. Because the serendipity of news feeds is what we're hoping to take advantage of here that really can't be done any other way. Let me close that and go to, I think this one. Hang on a second. Okay. So I'm on my profile part of this page. Let me go back to the news feed actually, because I'm at the wall. And I was there for a reason, but let me show you this first. So every time Fong He posts something, I get a message about that. If I repost Fong He's message, everybody in my network sees what Fong was doing if I find that particularly interesting to share. Same thing with Pat Lindgren, same thing with Lois Olson. Some of this stuff isn't particularly interesting to the rest of the universe, but some of it's really pretty cool, right? So if I'm all of a sudden very interested in the fact that there's a vacant property in my house that's on my block that's listed for $20,000, and if you're a first-time home buyer, and you've got your pick of $20,000 houses with $8,000 of Obama money and all this stuff, you're like, oh my goodness, where do I start? What you know about that house is that somebody you know lives there. That house just became way more valuable than every other house that you know, because if you need to borrow a lawnmower, you know somebody. If you need to ask a question about restaurants, if you need a babysitter, you know somebody. There's social value in that information exchange, and it doesn't cost me anything to give it up on Facebook, to just say, I'm on this block, and my wife's a great gardener. If you need to split hostas, we can hook you up, we're ready. But that is all of a sudden something that no other home in that vacant category list has got, is a personal connection to somebody that's already committed there. And we think that that's what social networking can really bring into this whole, how do we solve this big, huge crisis thing one at a time. We get every individual owner on those blocks to see what they can contribute, get it into their newsfeed, and then someone in that newsfeed or the feed that it might then be copied to might actually be a homeowner that's interested in that. So the reason I put this particular feed up, because it gets to another question that Richard was talking about just a moment ago, I think this is important, is, let me go back to the profiles part of this here. There we go. Okay. Apparently I hit it twice. By the way, I've Steve Boland is in the Blandin session typing during the presentation. So this is just one of the reasons of how easy it is to do this stuff. I'm sitting on my phone chatting with you, and here it is in front of the rest of the universe. But the profile says Steve Boland, parentheses, Steve Boland work. And I want to bring this up because there are some policy questions about what do you allow people to share in these social spaces, because there is going to inevitably be the crazy person out there that goes, the east side of St. Paul, I wouldn't live there, and criminals and awful people, and some kind of horrible thing is going to come up. You don't want that to be from a workplace or even necessarily your own personal account, but I do a lot of this social media stuff as part of work, and I need to be able to identify as part of work. I created a social media account on Facebook just to do work-based communication. So if you do a profile search of my work account, if I can get that to pop, in terms of personal information, hello. Social media sites are really good at getting things like birthdays, spouses' names, vacation pictures, all that kind of stuff. And for some reason, I'm not getting, oh, it's info that I'm looking for, not profile. Here we go. Under basic information, political views, yes, I have them. Religious views, yep, got those too. Not sharing what they are specifically, because really that's not why I'm here in this. In my personal account, I do have some political views that sometimes I share with my friends. I do have some views on current issues of the day that I share with my friends. I don't share any of that here. This is just work stuff. But it allows me to be in the same space where all those people are, and to aggregate those same streams, and to pull those same news feeds together. Now, Steve Boland Work has about 150 friends. Steve Boland, to me as a person, has about 200. I have different networks that I'm pulling from in those two different places. But it allows me to aggregate that content and very specifically make posts that are maybe more interesting to one audience, but allow me to still do things like this vacant housing deal where it's more of a personal thing. I can promote my work stuff in work accounts all the time. But really, the choice about leveraging the value of me trying to recruit somebody to my home or to my block is more about me as a person. So that social network is more valuable than the work one. In terms of the policies about where do we, and the other thing is, there's a little bit more of a staid sort of photo here. Let me go back over to this one. This is my personal account. My kids buried me in leaves. I like that picture. I thought it was kind of fun, so I put it up on Facebook. I'm not going to present myself professionally that way, except if we're